If I started reading fantasy in 2026, then this is exactly how I would do it. Now, I have read more than 300 sci-fi and fantasy books over the past 6 years, and I read a lot of amazing books and a lot of bad books. And if you are looking to get into fantasy next year, then I'm literally in this video going to provide you a month-by-month guide on how you can read the best fantasy books out there that are great for beginners and also get exposure to a wide range of fantasy, because fantasy is so wide. No, not everything is Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. We have so many different types of fantasies, and I want to help you to get exposed to as many different fantasy books that are also still absolutely amazing. So you can see here, this is the first page of the guide, and there's basically 3 different levels to this guide. If you go on hardcore mode and you follow my guide step by step, then in next year you will be reading 48 fantasy books. That is a lot, and that's not realistic for most people, but the great thing about this guide here is that you can easily cut it in half, so you can read 24 books a year, or you can even make it so you only read 1 book a month, and that is still amazing. Now, if you do follow my guide, then next year you'll be reading a minimum of 4 whole trilogies, 11 standalones, and another book that is kind of sort of a series, and there will be flexibility for you to choose a lot of other books that you just want to pick up because someone else has recommended it. And you can get access to this guide, the PDF file, for totally free if you go to my Patreon and sign up as a free member. I'll leave the link in the description down below. So without further ado, let's go into January. So for January 2026, I think that if you are not used to reading fantasy, you should start by reading The Hobbit. So that will be your first read of next year, and I think it's a brilliant introduction. Firstly, it is written by the granddaddy of fantasy. Yes, I call Tolkien granddaddy. And The Hobbit is such an amazing introduction. I read The Hobbit again this year, so it was a reread for me, and I just loved it. I think Tolkien has an amazing way to craft worlds. His prose is so rich, and it's just a great time. Now, probably a lot of you have already read The Hobbit, which is fine, but if you haven't, then I think that this is like the perfect entry point to fantasy. Now, as you can see on the guide, we have a standalone. So every single month, you're gonna have 1 standalone recommendation from me, and here's a standalone that is like classic epic fantasy. And then for every month, I'm going to be recommending a trilogy. And to kick off the January month, I think you should start reading The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. So we kind of have 2 different beasts here already in January. We have Tolkien, who basically created the genre of epic fantasy, and then we have Brandon Sanderson, who is one of the most influential modern fantasy writers. The Mistborn trilogy is a trilogy that made me fall in love with fantasy, and it was my first introduction to what is called hard magic system. If you're not used to reading fantasy, then this will probably be totally new for you, but in Middle-earth, we have soft magic systems where magic is basically unexplained. We know Gandalf has powers, but we don't really know exactly how it works. But in Mistborn, there's a lot of details of exactly how the magic system works, and it creates some amazing scenarios, and it's just so well done. I love the Mistborn trilogy, and this is a trilogy that almost everyone suggests to pick up if you want to get into fantasy. So I think you'll have an amazing month here, but there's still 2 more books to go. So the beauty of this guide here is that I still want to give you some flexibility to pick up books that you want to read because someone else has recommended it, or because you've gone into a bookstore and something looks exciting. Because if you just follow my step-by-step guide every single way of this journey, it will get boring. And that's why at the bottom of this guide, I have 2 books where you can just choose your own adventure, and it's totally up for you. Now, on this guide, I will usually write some other recommendations. So for example, on Choose Your Adventure number 1, I said that if you love The Hobbit, you can definitely go and pick up the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That could be a good suggestion. And then also below that I wrote, if you loved Mistborn, then you could pick up Elantris or Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. But those 2 reads are books that you can choose what you want to read. But that is January. Let's go to February. So for February, I want to expose you to a bit of like mystery literary fiction. So for the standalone read here, we have one of the greatest standalones I've ever read, and it's really short, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Now, this is a very different type of fantasy than Mistborn and The Hobbit, because it's basically set in a big ancient labyrinth where a man is there and he doesn't really know why he's there, and there's lots of statues, and it's just super, super strange. And it's more written in a literary kind of way, so similar to English literature kind of works, but it is still fantasy, and it is absolutely beautiful, absolutely haunting, and Susanna Clarke is just amazing when it comes to her writing style. Another thing I'll just mention here is that even though this guide is totally free, if you do click on the cover of the book, so let me just go to January, and you click on it, then there is an Amazon link that will take you to a place where you can buy the book, and I do get a commission if you do that, otherwise it's totally free. But yeah, after you read Piranesi and hope you loved it as much as I did, you will go and continue the Mistborn trilogy with The Well of Ascension, a great, great follow-up from the Final Empire. Now, the second book is much more focused on the politics of the world, but I still loved it. And as always, your third and fourth read is up to you to choose. You can do whatever you want, but I just suggested here that if you love Piranesi, you can check out Susanna Clarke's other major work, Jonathan Strange and Miss Norrell. And again, if you love Mistborn, there are other Cosmere novels out there like Warbreaker and Elantris. Okay, I need to talk to you about this product. Now, I'll be honest, I was a bit skeptical when I first heard about this. I mean, I had never seen anything like this quite before, and the idea of an eye massager just sounded a bit futuristic. But after actually trying it, I was really surprised because this is so relaxing. So the Bob and Brad Eye Oasis 3 eye massagers basically uses gentle air compression and soothing heat around your eyes, and honestly, it's actually the heat for me that really provides next level comfort and takes it to a whole new level for how relaxing this is to actually have on. And lately, I've been using this product in a way that works perfectly for me. Now, I usually get so easily distracted when I'm reading, and I really struggle to switch off my mind, and I'll just suddenly find myself scrolling on my phone. But now I will often put these on my eyes, just shut my eyes and connect it to my phone via Bluetooth, and then I'll listen to an audiobook. It basically forces me to stop looking at my screen and just be still for a while, but I'm still getting through books while I'm doing it. It's also great that it folds up like this, it has a really long battery life, and even comes with a cooling gel mask if you want to reduce puffiness or eye strain. So yeah, I actually went from being a bit skeptical to being kinda obsessed. So if you're like me and you love reading and you often experience eye strain, then this might be the perfect Christmas gift for yourself or a loved one. Now, I'll leave a link in the description down below where you can pick up this product. Thank you so much to Bob and Brad for sponsoring this video. Alright, March. Now we are going to explore cozy fantasy. Going to give you a new flavor of what fantasy can bring, because up until now, you have read a lot of epic stuff. So the standalone I would recommend you picking up in March is Legends and Latte by Travels Baldry, which has almost become like the image of what cozy fantasy is. Now, traditionally, epic fantasy has been high stakes, huge stakes, the world is ending, but Legends and Latte is totally different. This novel literally follows an orc that sets up a coffee shop, and that's it. It is so wholesome, it's so cozy, amazing descriptions of food and coffee and drinks. It is just the best time. So if you just want something that's wholesome, and again, experience what modern fantasy can bring, pick up Legends Latte. It's a great standalone. And then the trilogy read will obviously be the last book in the Mistborn trilogy, The Hero of Ages, which I think is an amazing, amazing conclusion to a masterpiece. Now again, you have 2 more books, you can pick up whatever you want to read, and I'll leave that up to you. Alright, we're now getting to April, and I will now want to introduce you to some D&D, rock and roll, and also Grimdark. So firstly, what is the standalone you're going to be reading? So in April, you should pick up Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames. So this is kind of like a D&D type of story about literally a group of old heroes that go on one last adventure, and it is just a great time with lots of 80s references, lots of humor, and the pacing is all over the place, but it's so fun. Now personally, I generally don't love these types of stories, but this one is really well executed, and I think that if you're exploring fantasy, you need to try and read a story like this one, and almost everyone loves it, so definitely check it out. But really excitingly, the next trilogy you're going to be reading in April, you are going to be starting The Blade Itself, which is the first book in the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. Now, in modern fantasy, Grimdark is a subgenre that has taken the genre by storm over the past 20 years or so. Now, a lot of people say that George R.R. Martin, he popularized Grimdark fantasy. I'm not going to recommend The Song of Ice and Fire because it's such a big series, and I think that in 2027, that might be a series you need to tackle. But for now, the best introduction I can give you to Grimdark is the First Law trilogy. So get ready to meet a lot of morally grey characters and a lot of characters that are just downright horrible human beings with the Blade itself. Now, what I will say about this trilogy is that yes, it's bleak, it's dark, but Joe Abercrombie is one of the best character writers in the genre. His ability to write characters is incredible, and also the audiobook is brilliant if you're into audiobooks here. The only thing I'll say here is the first book is really slow. A lot of people lose interest in the first book because you basically are just following characters walking around and chatting, but just trust the process. This trilogy is influential and it's massively popular for a reason. Then for the other two books, again, you can choose your adventure, but I recommend it here that if you loved The Kings of the Wyld, you should check out the sequel Standalone. So it's a standalone again, called Bloody Rose, again by Nicholas Eames. And if you want more grimdark after The Blade itself, then I would recommend checking out the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence, which is also incredibly dark. Let's go on to May. So for May, again, I want to expose you to some new kind of fantasy with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So this is actually one of my favorite standalones because I think it's so beautifully written. And again, it is offering something new to the genre. So this is a standalone fantasy novel that is set in our world, but it takes place over 200 years. We have two different plot lines, one that takes place in the 1800s and one that takes place in our day and age. And it's crazy how these two plot lines interweave. This is a novel a lot about memory and loss and what it means to experience love. And it's just so beautiful. One of my favorite standalones, and I hope you will love it as well. And then obviously for the trilogy read, you will be picking up book 2 in the First Law trilogy, Before They're Hanged. I think this is where the First Law trilogy really starts to become amazing, and hopefully you'll be hooked by the time you actually pick up this book. For Choose Your Own Adventure, I'll just say that if you love The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, you should definitely check out some of V. Schwab's other books. I haven't yet, but she has quite a big library of books that you can, pick up. So that is the month of May. For June, I need to expose you a bit to historical fantasy / dark academia. So the standalone read you're going to be having in June will be Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now, if you don't know anything about fantasy, then people have very strong opinions about R.F. Kuang. They either love her works or they hate her works. But one thing is always clear in her novels, and that is that there's a strong thematic message in almost all of her novels she has written, and it's certainly no different in Babel. Babel takes place in 1800 Oxford, and it's a historical fantasy, so we're set in a real life setting, but there are some light magical elements, and this novel here explores colonialism and translations in ways I've never experienced before. I personally love this standalone, but a lot of people also hate it because the political messaging is really in your face. But I think that this is one of the best novels that R.F. Kuang has written, and you just need to pick up at least one R.F. Kuang novel in your reading journey because she is so influential, especially when it comes to modern fantasy. And then obviously, for our trilogy read, you are now going to conclude the First Law trilogy with The Last Argument of Kings. I loved the third book. I thought both book 2 and 3 were just as good, and hopefully you'll absolutely love it. Now, if you still want to get a recommendation from me for the other 2 optional slots here, then I would just say go and check out some of R.F. Kuang's other novels, because at this point I think she has 6 books out there, and all of them are great in their own ways. Alright, let's get to July. Okay, in July, I'm going to break your heart. I'm going to give you lots and lots of pain, but you just have to go through it. So the standalone novel I'm going to be recommending here is The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wong. I keep saying that, this is one of my favorite standalones, but truly, The Sword of Kaigen is one of the greatest standalones I've ever read, and the fact that this was self-published originally, or it might still be, I'm not sure, it's just astounding. This novel here analyzes and depicts grief in one of the most realistic ways I've ever come across in the genre. It is masterfully done, and Emma Wong does something really interesting with this novel here as well. The main climax of this novel is basically at the 50% mark of this novel, and then the second half of the book analyzes the aftermath of what happened in the first half of the book. It's really interesting, but it really makes that thematic analysis of grief just really hit home. I also just think the world building here is so fascinating because we're set in what feels like a 1700 Asian inspired setting kinda, but then we hear about modern technology outside of this setting. It's so fascinating. Pick up this one and bring tissues because it'll break your heart. And then we're not done with the heartache because I'm now going to be recommending that you pick up the Farsi trilogy by Robin Hobb, starting with the book Assassin's Apprentice. Robin Hobb is one of the greatest character writers I've ever come across, and this is the first trilogy in a huge universe called Realm of the Elderlings. Now, in the Farsi trilogy, you will follow a character called Fitz, and Robin Hobb just loves to torture Fitz for some reason, but Fitz is truly one of the greatest characters out there ever. Robin Hobb's books are slow burn though, so I'm just warning you, it's not like Kings of the Wyld where action happens all the time. Robin Hobb likes to take her time, but it just means that emotional punch just hits so much harder when it actually hits. And it also just allows Robin Hobb to really flesh out the characters. I think the Farsi trilogy is one of the greatest trilogies of all time, and I hope you will love it as much as I do. Now again, pick up some books that you want to read, but if you want some more recommendations, if you love Sword of the Kaigen, then I would recommend checking out Blood or Bright Haven by M.L. Wong, which is her second book, also standalone. And if you love the Farsi trilogy, then check out Memories of Iron Thorn, which I think there's definitely some overlap there in writing style and also character development. In August, I now want to expose you to political fantasy. So the standalone read I'm going to be recommending here is The Councillor by E.J. Beaton. I think this is one of the most underrated novels I have ever read. It is amazing if you love novels that are really focused on like scheming and the politics and backstabbing, and you just want to get lost in the dialogue between the characters. Because albeit there are some action scenes in this novel, the real excitement and tension is just when people are sitting around a table and are discussing the fate of the kingdom. Oh, it's so good. So The Councillor was actually originally written as the first book in a trilogy. Unfortunately, the publisher decided not to publish book 2. I don't know what happened there. But the good news is, this book is very much both written and can be read as a standalone. Please do not overlook this one. I'll just warn you though, for some reason E.J. Beaton with The Councillor decided to write a book with insanely long chapters. So that's the only drawback. The chapters are just stupid long. And then obviously for your trilogy read, you're going to be continuing the Robin Hobb Farsi trilogy with book 2, Royal Assassin. This book here is considerably longer than Assassin's Apprentice, but hopefully you'll be in love with this universe at this time. Alright, let's go on to September. So for September, I now again want to expose you to something a bit different, and that is creepy, haunting woods. So for your standalone read, I would recommend you pick up Mythago Wood by Robert Holzak, which won the BFSA award in 1981, so this is a classic of epic fantasy work. I read this novel last year, and I adored it. In a lot of ways, it's similar to Piranesi, where it's really mysterious, haunting, and the author definitely does not explain everything that's happening, but it takes place in a weird, mysterious wood, and there are these Mythagos, which I'm not even sure if I'm able to explain what they are, but it's so haunting, it's so creepy, and Robert Holzak's writing will just absolutely immerse you in this universe. Now, if you look online, it may look like Mythago Wood is part of a 7-book series, which technically it is, but all the books are written as standalones, and Mythago Wood is very much a standalone. I think this is a criminally underrated book in our day and age. I know it's a classic, and a lot of people, that are a bit older than me have read and loved this novel, but we younger readers, I'm still calling myself young, I'm 29 years old, but I'm still young, okay? We just have not picked up this novel and talked about it enough. It is amazing. And then, obviously, for your trilogy read, you're now going to be concluding the Farsi trilogy with Assassin's Quest. This novel is huge. It is absolutely huge, and it's also, I'm just going to give you a heads up, it's a good novel, but it's also my least favorite in the whole trilogy. Her pacing just slows down too much for my liking this one. Nonetheless, it is amazing. For your optional reads here, if you love Mythago Wood, pick up some of the other novels in the Mythago Wood universe. They're standalones. The second novel is called Lattes, which I read earlier this year, would recommend it. And then obviously, if you love the Farsi trilogy, you can either pick up Memories of Iron Thorn, but maybe here at this point, it makes more sense to pick up the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which is the second trilogy set in this universe, and in my opinion, is even better than Farsi. Alright. October. I think that you need to get exposed to absurdist, comedic, and weird fantasy. And that's why for your standalone read in October, I'm going to be recommending that you pick up Mort by Terry Pratchett. So this will be your introduction to the absolute massive fantasy series called Discworld. Now Discworld has a lot of different ways you can get into the universe because it's is just absolutely huge. But the first Discworld novel I read was called Mort, and I thought it was a great starting point. When I say it's absurdist fantasy, it just means there's a lot of humor, and in a lot of ways the world is just crazy. Literally, the Discworld is a world, and I'm probably getting this wrong, but I think the world is built on a huge flying sea turtle that has 4 elephants on it, and on top of that the Discworld is, which is a round plate. It is wild and it is hilarious. But Pratchett was so good at writing absurdist fantasy that no one has come even close to rival his genius. So definitely check out this one. It's also relatively short, and I think most of you will have a wonderful time with this. And if you don't, then at least you have dipped your toes into absurdist fantasy and you know what it is. And then the last trilogy I will recommend that you pick up this year in October will be the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, starting with Jade City. I've only recommended books on this list that I love, but this is truly one of the greatest trilogies of all time. It is a Godfather-esque kind of fantasy, which is set in a modern Asian-inspired setting, and it is amazing. It has some of the best politics I've ever come across in the genre. It has some of the best characters, and every single book just gets better and better. I loved every single book in this universe, and it just has all the elements I love. Truly one of the greatest modern trilogies of all time. So for the optional reads here, obviously, if you loved Mort, then pick up some of the other Discworld novels. There's like 40 plus books out there you can dive into and have a great time with. And if you love Jade City, I don't really have an amazing recommendation, but probably the closest I can give you is The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu, which is a silk punk fantasy also set in an Asian-inspired setting, but it's much more epic in scale. So that might be the closest I can give you to a recommendation if you loved Jade City. Alright, we're getting close to the end of this year, so November, month 11, I'm now going to bring you back to some classic fantasy. So for your standalone here, I'll recommend that you pick up The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, which is in, according to publication order, their first novel in the Narnia universe. Now chronologically, I think it's the third novel, but it's the first novel that was published, and it's a classic. It's a really short, middle grade fantasy, so at this stage, you'll probably feel like this is really young, but I think it's worth picking up. For one reason, Narnia was hugely influential, and then secondly, I think it's overall a really good story. This also falls into what's called Christian fantasy, since there's a lot of allegory, so also if you're into that, then that's another reason to pick up Narnia. But yeah, it's a classic for a reason. I would definitely recommend giving it a read. For your trilogy read, you're always going to be continuing the Greenbone Saga with Jade War. This novel is amazing again. It's better than Jade City, even though I gave all of them 5 stars. I hope you'll enjoy it. And then obviously for your optional reads, if you love The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, then check out some of the other Narnia novels. There's 7 books in total, and you can read them either in publication order or you can read them in chronological order. I'm sure online you'll see exactly the different ways you can read this series. And December, we're getting to the end of the year, and you have been exposed to so many different types of fantasies. Believe me, you're only scratching the surface. There's so much stuff out there. But now I want to introduce you to some truly modern fantasy, and I'm going to be introducing you to LitRPG. So for your standalone read, I'm actually not recommending a standalone here. I'm recommending a novel called Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman, which at the moment is the first book in a 7-book series, and I think book 8 is coming out next year, so in 2026. But I just feel like you need to be exposed to what's truly getting all the hype at the moment within my niche, LitRPG. What is LitRPG? It's literature that has game playing mechanics. So literally characters level up, they increase stamina, energy, agility. It is wild. But Dungeon Crawler Carl is a fun time. There's so much humor, the pacing is crazy, and it's not often that I say listen to the audiobook over the physical book, but here I would make a strong case for it. The audiobook has a lot of like game mechanic voices in it. It is so well done. So well done. So I would recommend pick up the audiobook. If you love it, then obviously for your optional reads at the end of the year, you can continue this universe because there's, as I said, 7 or 8 books out there already. And then the last read I'm obviously going to be recommending is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. In my opinion, one of the greatest conclusions to a trilogy ever. The ambition is off the scale when it comes to this one, because Fonda Lee takes the last novel and spans the plot over a decade. So you really get to see the conflict, everything that you've been seeing unfolding in book 1 and 2, the impact of that over a long period of time. And It is masterful. It is amazing. And I hope you love it as much as I, because in my opinion, this is a 6 out of 5 star read. So that is your introduction to reading fantasy in 2026. As I said, if you go to my Patreon and sign up as a free member, you don't have to pay anything. You can get access to this PDF. And I would love to hear from you if you think some other books should have been on this list instead. I intentionally stayed away from huge epic series like Wheel of Time, Malison, and stuff like that, because I just want you to be introduced to a wide range in 2026. And after you've done this guide here, you are now ready to tackle the Wheel of Time, A Song of Ice and Fire, the Stormwall Archive, and all those huge epic series that are out there.